To get Skizatune Hail Mary, dial star 811 star 963 hash.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
To get Hail Mary, dial star 811 star 963 hash, star 811 star 963 hash.
A very good afternoon to you. It is the 10th of May, the year 2023. Thank you for choosing us for Lunchtime News. I am Nissie, Imano, and Susan Thuku is our sign language interpreter this afternoon. Please feel free to talk to us on Facebook, on Twitter at KBC Channel 1. Now, the proposed Finance Bill 2023 has continued to face objection from different quarters. Council of Governors Chair for Finance, Planning and Economic Affairs, Fernandez Barasa, has called on Parliament to reject it, saying if it goes through, it will oppress Kenyans. Speaking in Kakamega, Barasa said Parliament has a responsibility to protect the interest of Kenyans. The bill is pending discussion in Parliament.
Looking at the proposals in the Finance Act, where taxes payee is going to be increased from 30 to 35%. We are going to have 3% deduction on housing. There is an increase in the fuel levy from a paltry 4% to 16%. What that tells you, it is going to be impossible for us to even imagine that the cost of living will come down. And that is why our position as the Council, we are now calling upon the National Assembly to stand up and be guided by the principle of consciousness, so that they don't push this agenda on partisan basis.
All right, moving on, we now want to head on over to the Bomas of Kenya, where Gladys Mungai is our reporter on standby, and she's going to be updating us on the bipartisan talks that have kicked off today. Good afternoon, Gladys.
Yeah. If you do align.
Good afternoon to you, Nissie, and like you indeed rightly put it, we are coming to you live from the Bomas of Kenya in Nairobi County, where the bipartisan committee, this is a 14-member team initially, but now they are 13, tasked with the mandate of addressing issues that were raised by the Azimio la Umoja, is convening here at Bomas of Kenya following an invite by the co-chair of this bipartisan committee, that is Rarieda Member of Parliament Otiende Amolo, who wrote to the committee seeking to have them attend their meeting today, convening that particular meeting. And as we speak, that particular meeting is in place and is taking place in one of the chambers at the Bomas of Kenya. And these particular members, like I said, they are 13 following the recusal of Eldas Member of Parliament, that is Eden Kenan, who recused himself from this.
Kenya will continue today.
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition had issued an ultimatum that the talks were not going to continue unless this particular member is removed or he has rescued himself from the membership of the committee, owing to the fact that the Azimio was claiming that Eldas Member of Parliament is still a member of the Jubilee Party, which is a constituent member of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition political party. That particular meeting is going on at the moment, although there are some new developments where the Jubilee Party new Secretary General, that is Honorable Kanini Kega, the former member of Parliament for Kieni, has written to the Speaker of the National Assembly as well as the co-chairs of these particular bipartisan committees, seeking to have that bipartisan committee halt its mandate, that is the talk that are currently ongoing, saying that the mandate and what the committee will be reporting by the end of these particular sittings will have a huge impact, owing to the fact that the representation of Jubilee Party is not yet there at the moment. And what Kanini Kega-led faction wants is that in the next 14 days, if the talk will not be halted, they are going to be moving to court, seeking to have the bipartisan committee halt its sittings until that particular time when a member of the Jubilee Party is included in these particular committee sittings. Remember, Nissie, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party has a myriad of agendas that want this bipartisan committee to address, among them the cost of living, the composition of the electoral body IEBC, as well as the inclusion of the Cherera form. Bearing in mind that this particular meeting is currently ongoing, we await to see what the committee will tell us as members of the fourth estate and relate to the members of the public. But I can comprehensively tell you the co-chair Otiende Amolo is here, and the part of Kenya Kwanza is being represented, or so to speak, being led by the member for Kibwezi West Member of Parliament, that is Mwengi Mutuse, owing to the fact that the co-chair of from the Kenya Kwanza delegation, that is George Murugara, is not yet here at Bomas of Kenya. And from what we've gathered is that the co-chair is currently outside the country. So this being the very first sitting of the committee, we are waiting to hear what this committee will be telling us, if indeed they have agreed with a letter from the Kanini Kega-led faction in regards to the halting of these particular talks until there is a representative from the Jubilee Party, or if indeed the committee has decided to finally commence these particular talks, and that particular issue will be addressed as the bipartisan talks commence and go on moving forward. Back to you, Nissie.
Thank you very much. That is Gladys Mungai. Of course, she is on that story and she'll be giving us an update in our subsequent bulletins, and we'll be following up on that story for you. But moving on, President William Ruto has said that Kenya will continue to deepen its ties with Israel for the economic prosperity of the two countries. Speaking in Jerusalem, Israel on Tuesday evening when he was hosted to a state dinner by his Israel counterpart Isaac Herzog, Ruto said Kenya is keen on tapping on the models used by Israel to improve the economy. President Herzog, on the other hand, affirmed the ties between the two countries remain cordial and rich.
Dedication and my own affection.
Thank you. Thank you.
with the consensus reached today by our two countries on establishing direct flights as soon as possible between Nairobi and Tel Aviv. These direct flights will not only facilitate trading relations but will greatly increase the number of tourists visiting both countries. Many of us coming for pilgrimage and many of you coming to visit the cradle of mankind. Apart from the irresistible touristic offerings of magical Kenya and the Holy Land, there is an abundance of complementary opportunities between us as a thriving regional and continental hub and gateway to East and Central Africa, and Israel, which is a recognized leader in technological innovation that power heavy industrial and civil engineering, smart agriculture, irrigation, security ICT, and of course, health and medicine.
But historical developments also put Kenya at powerful cultural and economic intersections of civilizations that have positioned it to broadly influence the unfolding human story. It is therefore not in the slightest bit surprising that one of the first conceptual drafts of Zionism was to opt for a national home for the Jewish people in your land. Of course, it was called the Uganda plan, but it was actually the Kenya plan.
Elsewhere, former Samburu County Women Representative Mason Leshomo has called out East African Legislative Assembly Member of Parliament Kanini Kega for what she termed as orchestrating leadership wrangles in the Jubilee Party. Leshomo says Kega should leave the party to restructure their frameworks. Her sentiments come as the Yala MP put out a paid advertisement in the local dailies calling off Jubilee's National Delegates Conference that was to be presided over by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta on the 22nd of this month.
Ningependa kusema Kanini Kega, Sabina Chege. Hawa ni nominated, wamenominatiwa na chama. Lakini kama umekuwa nominated kwa chama na unasaliti chama, unafaa kuondoka. Hiyo ni sheria, si hata kitu ya kuomba. Kwa hivyo sisi pia tunasema waache kutuibisha, waondoke kwa chama, waache kuibisha chama. Chama hii imebeba Wakenya wote. Ile delegate tunajua ni ile tulichagua hawa. Kwa hivyo bado sisi tunangoja tuambiwe sio Kioni ndio General Secretary, sio Uhuru ndio party leader. Kwa sababu bado sisi tunajua party leader ni Uhuru, General Secretary ni Kioni na wale wengine.
Naivasha Member of Parliament Jen Kihara has opposed the government's proposal to impose a housing levy on civil servants, saying it should be voluntary. The lawmaker, while terming the idea as noble, noted that it should not be made mandatory for all civil servants to contribute. She also termed the proposed tax reviews as unfair at a time when Kenyans are facing harsh economic times. Kihara spoke at Mirera High School in Naivasha after handing over bursaries to support needy students.
We are going to review. The government does not do any business. It gets development funding from taxes. But also, coming from where we were in the drought, we need to relook. And I have seen there is a lot of communication from members of parliament, which means we are going to sit and see where we can shift, what we can do. It is
And moving on, more than 5,000 secondary and college students have benefited from the 36 million shillings Funyula constituency bursary scheme. Funyula Member of Parliament Dr. Owondo Mudenyo, who distributed checks to the beneficiaries, urged the Ministry of Education to release capitation funds to schools early enough for smooth operations. He also called for the timely allocation of funds meant for infrastructural development in junior secondary schools. The legislature at the same time decried the increased cases of drug abuse among students, urging parents and teachers to take appropriate measures to control the situation.
Mhakikishe pesa ya capitation, pesa ya free secondary education na free primary education imefika shuleni haraka iwezekanavyo. Hamtasema tunataka kuboresha hali ya elimu na hamleti pesa. CDF itasaidia pahali itasaidia. Haitajaza pengo lote ambalo shule zinataka. Tunajua kunayo pesa tuliwekwa supplementary, pesa ya infrastructure, haswa kwa junior secondary school. Tunaomba pia serikali ilete hiyo pesa haraka mapema iwezekanavyo, tufanye mambo ya laboratory katika shule zetu ya JSS, watoto wetu pia wajisikie wameenda kusoma wakielekea mbele. Mambo ya drug abuse is becoming endemic in this constituency of ours of Funyula. Tusidanganyishe. Tusidanganye, we should not sweep the dust under the carpet thinking all is well. Mambo imeanza kuwa mabaya. We ask you, the principals and the teachers, you are trained to pick out these vices. You can tell a child who is on drugs.
Leaders in Isiolo County have been called upon to help expand the Isiolo Town Library, which is struggling to accommodate the soaring number of users. According to the librarian Rufus Kidhinji, the library has attracted a huge number of primary, secondary and college learners, as well as civil servants, making the available space inadequate to accommodate the rising number of users.
Ni kwa sababu we see our children hapa, mainly Isiolo, our children are getting lost kwa the peer groups that they have outside there. Now we find in Isiolo we have a lot of drugs. Na hawa wanafunzi, if we don't engage them especially during the holidays and weekends where they have free time, if we don't engage them with the reading, now there will be a lost generation and we cannot recover them.
Na tunaungana sana kama serikali kuu, na pia tunaomba wenzetu kutoka serikali ya county wakuje tukue pamoja kwa hii sherehe ambayo inakuwa ya maana sana. Vile mwenzangu ameongea hapa, kuna shida mingi sana hapa Isiolo ya mihadarati, watoto kupotea njia na maneno kama hiyo. Hii ni njia moja mzuri ya kuleta watoto wetu karibu.
And elsewhere, the Kenya Red Cross Society has embarked on a campaign to sensitize residents of Samburu County and its environs on disaster preparedness and quick response to protect lives and health. Speaking at Maralal Town in Samburu County, Area Branch Kenya Red Cross Society Coordinator Maurice Onyango noted the importance of empowering residents to make the right decisions when faced with natural disasters.
Pili ni social access, ukwe ready kwenda kwa community kuwasaidia or response faster. Na tunashukuru Kenya Red Cross.
Kupitia masomo ya leo nimeweza kuelewa yale wanafanya na vile wanajukumia disaster sikikuja. Wameweza kutueleza disaster programs zile wanafanya, wameweza kutuelezea youth programs zile wanafanya, wameweza kusema vile wanafanya resilience in the community.
Tuko na wale ambao tunafanya kazi nao kwa karibu wa kujitolea kama volunteers ambao ni first responders, pia kuwafundisha maneno ya safe access na vitu ambao wakienda kule kufanya kazi inawasaidia vilivyo jinsi wanaweza kusaidiana na jamii.
And 6 ASAL counties have been earmarked for a year-long reproductive program that seeks to empower vulnerable populations. The program will ensure that essential reproductive health medicines and supplies are distributed to health facilities. The initiative will be rolled out by the United Nations Population Fund in partnership with non-governmental organizations. Speaking in Garissa, UNFPA country representative Anders Thompson said the initiative will improve institutional capacity of the county governments to provide these services in emergencies. The 6 target counties include Garissa, Turkana, Marsabit, Isiolo, Samburu, and Mandera.
We are also working to prevent gender-based violence, including harmful practices such as female genital mutilation and early marriage. Of course, we are very pleased to be in Garissa, not only Garissa town, but the entire county. We applaud Garissa for being on the forefront.
The gaps are so huge, we can't address all, but through partnership, through stakeholder engagement, both at the 2 levels of the government, we're able to address some of this narrow or reduce the gaps through stakeholder or teamwork.
If this program comes, it will do a great help to the county and it will improve our indicators. And what they have launched today, the Mama Kits, which they have donated to us, I'm told there are 100 packs of maternal Mama Kits. This one now will improve and attract more mothers to deliver at the health facility in Garissa Referral Hospital.
Very low respectable level.
And more than 1,800 students under the Equity Wings to Fly scholarship from Coast Region have successfully gone through a mentorship program on how to be astute leaders and role models in the society. Speaking at Shimolatewa National School in Mombasa, after addressing the 1895 top performers, Equity Group Holding Chief Operations Officer Samuel Kirubi said under the annual Equity Leadership Program, the learners are being nurtured to be responsible members of society.
Has been able to see almost 55,000 kids through the education pillar for the group. Success rates around 83% are able to pass to the university. So these annual Congress clearly shapes them, gives them the focus in terms of excellence in academic. But beyond that, we also focus about character because we'd like to mold another person who is an overhaul in terms of expectations in the society. So the program joins into what is called Equity Leadership Program, where after they do their Form 4, those who excel very well, they get an opportunity to work for the bank under the paid internship before they join university.
Elsewhere, the Canadian government says it remains committed to supporting students from informal settlements to access equal opportunities through education. The Canadian High Commissioner, Christopher Thornley, however, says there is a need to combine efforts in providing education in low-income areas. Thornley commended non-state actors for their continued support for education programs, especially in slum areas.
We have a very active development program that we work in cooperation with the government of Kenya. In education, a few areas I can highlight. We work very closely with technical vocational education and training institutes to help young Kenyans achieve skills that they need.
With this support that we are getting from Global Affairs Canada, we are going to support 150 girls throughout the next 5 years. That is education. We're also going to give them life skills self-defense skills, but also other support that they need.
I will be working with Canada Mother Education Trust for the next 5 years to enable these girls access quality education in secondary and post-secondary education, and also these girls to be able to have life skills and leadership skills that they can be able to have the confidence to go to the community and society and challenge these gender inequalities.
Moving on, scientists from all over the world are in Kenya and are meeting at the National Museums of Kenya to brainstorm and compare technologies used by archaeologists in ancient DNA analysis. The forum, which is the first of its kind to be held in the country, will see delegates discussing population history, Africa, and how to leverage new methodologies being used in other continents and communities in matters DNA and research.
It's important because it shows we are able to study population history, integration, and also how we've been able to develop as humanity. We've been able to develop resilience and resist adaptability to different kind of diseases, including zoonotic diseases.
This research has primarily focused on places in Europe and Asia. It has not focused necessarily on Africa, which is bad because Africa is the birthplace of all human beings. So it is our objective with this conference and with our research and our collaborations with the National Museums of Kenya to start getting more African scholars and more African institutions involved in ancient DNA research.
Elsewhere, environment, forestry and climate change through the Principal Secretary Festus Kimotho has flagged off seeds from Kenya Forest Research Institute in Muguga to TVET across all 47 counties. The seeds will be planted to increase the number of seedlings, and the government is establishing 11 fully fledged seed centers across the country. The centers under the Kenya Forestry Research Institute KEFRI will produce both indigenous seeds and fruit tree seeds for propagation across Kenya Forest Service nurseries and private community nurseries across the country.
will lead to us planting 150 million. Leading institutions is Kenya Forest Services, which also has a target of propagating 300 million seedlings per year. We also have NOS, who also have a target of propagating 50 million seedlings per year. We also have Kenya Prisons, which also have a target of 100 million. We have KDF with a target of 50 million, and many other institutions.
In other news, former employees of the Pyrethrum Board of Kenya are appealing to Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi to help them get their 2.5 billion shillings pension arrears, which they have not received for the past 13 years. They are demanding the sale of 13 non-core assets spread across Nakuru City to settle their pending dues, as most of them are in their sunset years.
When we are talking about the senior citizens, these are people who worked for the former Pyrethrum Board of Kenya. They retired in good standing, and they should have been enjoying their sunset years by getting their monthly pension, because this is a defined benefit scheme where a member contributed and an employer also added some percentage on their contributions. We are making this final appeal to the President of the Republic of Kenya that senior citizens who work for the government should be protected, because it is unreasonable for a pensioner to go to court to ask for the money which he contributed when he was serving in employment.
Na ile inaniuma sana ni ya kwamba wakati nilikuwa nafanya kazi Pyrethrum Board, I was the welfare officer, nilikuwa naangalia welfare ya watu. Sasa nikisikia vile watu wanakufa, wengine na waona hata manyumbani mwao wameojeka, wengine wanakuwa referred waende hospitali zingine mahali wangefaidika, but they cannot afford sababu hakuna pesa. Watoto wengi wameitwa hata secondary schools wa wafanyikazi wa wale pensioners ambao hawawezi kwenda sababu pesa hawana.
The construction of the southeastern Kenya University Mwingi campus is set to resume after stalling for 7 years. The delay in developing the campus has been attributed to the need to ensure that once complete, it meets the required standards. Speaking after touring the site, the university vice-chancellor, Professor Geoffrey Muluvi, said the commencement of fencing is the beginning of the process of developing the campus. He said that the institution was working closely with both the national and county government to ensure its completion. Once complete, the campus is set to ease the burden for parents and students due to its access.
Going forward will be here. And this one we want to do a very good campus. It's in the university strategic plan. It's in our plans to develop this campus to be the pride of the people of this region and Kenya in general. If we can put the building we have already done in Wote or in the Kitui campus, one of them, then the campus can open.
We are happy that Professor Muluvi, the Vice-Chancellor of Seko University, has come. He has started now the fencing. It is clear. Now we are going forward, and there are things happening now in this compound.
All right, Brian Muraru, who is our sign language, and I will be back after this short break. Don't go too far.
Ili kupata sikiza tune hii ya Kibeti, bonyeza star 811 star 962 hash.
Haki umefanya vizuri sana kunifikia hii simu sasa. Nimekuwa na stress kutoka asubuhi kabisa. Na ni huyu mtu ambaye alikuwa anapatiana majina ya vitu. Kwani hakutufikiria sisi watu wa Eastern Ukambani? Ni nani alisema ati wife kwa Kiswahili ni mke? Na akasema ati handbaka. Hii inabebwa na mwanamke handbaka. Ati kwa Kiswahili ni kibeti. Huko kwetu mke ndiye kibeti.
Ili kupata sikiza tune hiyo ya Kibeti, bonyeza star 811 star 962 hash. Star 811 star 962 hash.
Hayawi mwishowe huwa Embu County 014 mliuliza tukajibu. Stesheni mpya ya Ngemi FM inawaalika mjumuike nasi katika bonge la roadshow itakayofanyika katika kaunti ya Embu. Kutakuwa na burudani, vichekesho na zawadi kemkem za kushindaniwa.
Ijumaa tarehe 12 mwezi huu wa Mei, msafara wa Ngemi FM utaanzia Embu na kuelekea Rueka, Muraro, Meka, Keretire, Siakago, Ogwere, Karurumo, Kanywambora na kumalizia siku ni Eshiara.
Jumamosi tarehe 13, msafara wa Ngemi FM utaanzia Embu na kutembelea maeneo ya Motondore, Manyata, Kianjokoma, Ronyenjes na kurudi Embu.
Baadaye mwendo wa saa 8 mchana, ungana nasi katika afra kubwa ya uzinduzi rasmi wa kituo cha Ngemi FM katika uwanja wa chuo kikuu cha Embu.
Kisha kufuatiliwa na usiku wa burudani ndani ya Ngemi Night katika Gerish Hotel kuanzia saa 2 usiku hadi che.
Jumapili tarehe 14 tutatamatisha ziara yetu ya uzinduzi wa Ngemi FM na ibada ya shukrani katika St. Peter ACK Cathedral, Chicago.
103.5 tumetua.
Ngemi FM,
Moshi wa Urata.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, residents of Lafay sub-county in Mandera County will now easily access government services following the opening of a civil registry office at the sub-county headquarters. The residents claim they have been spending close to 5,000 shillings as they travel in search of birth and death certificates, as well as other crucial documents. Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Immigration and Citizen Services, Ambassador Julius Bitok, says the government is moving towards digitization of all its services in the country to facilitate access of the critical documents online. Lafay Town Member of Parliament Mohammed Abdikair urged locals in the area to make use of the newly opened offices and register all children.
Mwakisha kwamba umejitokeza ma-chief, ma-assistant chief, ma-DCC, ma-SCC, tuhakikishe kwamba tumemobilize watu ili wafanye registration hapa Lafay. Hakuna tena kwenda Mandera kutafuta certificate.
Tia saa hii, kesho asubuhi saa 2 ofisi akifungua, mwende mtafute certificate, yeye ataniambia ni certificate ngapi, pesa mimi ndio nitalipa inshallah.
And the national government is on the move to appropriate the 60.4 billion Equalization Fund after the bill was passed by Senate. The funds will be used to develop the marginalized areas in the country.
2017 and the other one.
The disbursement for the Equalization Fund that was allocated 10 years ago after the marginalized area is now in its advanced stage after the Senate passed the appropriation bill last week. Speaking during a meeting in Kilifi County, Benedict Mwasia, a commissioner at the Commission for Revenue Allocation CRA, said the local administrations have been tasked to form committees to identify projects that should be prioritized once the funds are released.
Committees at the county level through the office of the county commissioner, sub-county level and the division level, the committees have been formed to identify projects.
During visits in Kilifi to validate mentioned marginalized area for gazetting, the commissioner assured the public that the process of releasing funds is nearly complete.
Areas of marginalized counties. Kilifi is one of them, but as you know, the county commissioners are forming committees. So how does the county get involved? Do you even know our roles? That the CC is supposed to be a member at the county level.
Even though the attempted coup of 1982 was by low-ranked Kenya Air Force servicemen failed to overthrow the President Daniel Arap Moi's government, the incident had far-reaching implications for the careers of the Kenya Air Force military officers. The entire Kenya Air Force was disbanded, leaving hundreds of military personnel discharged from service. Captain Joseph Mbugwa was one of them. Here now is his story on Military Tales.
Joseph Mwangi Mbugwa had already been trained by the East African community to join the East African Airways in 1975, when in a twist of events, he joined the military instead.
East African Airways or East African community had put an ad. They wanted to train pilots, ab initio pilots. So I applied. At the end of the interviews, 32 of us were selected to go to East African Civil Flying School, which was in Soroti, Uganda. It was while we were now doing ground school for the senior license, which is the Airline Transport Pilot's License, ATPL, that community broke up in 1977, and with it, East African Airways broke up.
That marked the end of the aviation training, but fate had other plans for Mbugwa.
Luckily, one of our instructors who came from Nairobi came to the school and told us that Kenya Air Force was holding interviews for pilots. So the Kenyans that were at East African Civil Flying School, we came to Nairobi and went for the interviews. I was among the ones that were selected in May 1977.
Mbugua vividly recalls the events that unfolded early morning, the 1st of August, 1982.
I was in my room at the officer's mess when around 8 o'clock in the morning, somebody banged on my door. So I went out to check who it was and found a soldier. I can't remember his name, but a soldier with a rifle. Told me, "Captain, dress up and go to the crew room." I was escorted to the crew room. Said, "What is happening?" "We have taken over the government." I went back to my room, tuned the radio. So when I heard, here, there's chaos. In the crew room, the soldiers with the rifles were around outside. They let us do our own thing, so we did our briefing. We talked what is going on, because none of us knew what was going on.
Mbugua and his crew had instructions to bomb specific targets.
Okay, of course they gave commands. They came and briefed us and told us, "We want you to go and bomb State House, bomb Voice of Kenya, bomb even Isri Air Base operations." They wanted us to bomb. They were targets. They gave us some targets. But after they left, of course they left us to do our own thing. He said, "We are not going to do any of that. But if they force us to fly, we will fly." So 2 of my colleagues, late Captain Mutua, David Mutua, and late Captain John Mugwanja, they took off and they came and flew in Nairobi, did all kinds of those maneuvers that would look like they were bombing the places in Nairobi, and flew back to Nairobi. I flew back to Nanyuki. There was yet another one that did that. The second one, I think they had strapped rockets. They came to Nairobi. Of course, they didn't shoot any rockets in Nairobi. They went and dropped the rockets over Mount Kenya forest. Came back and landed. So my colleague and I, we didn't fly.
Unfortunately, Mbugua was among scores of military personnel arrested and sent to prison.
We looked out the outside of our crew room, and we saw soldiers crawling in the grass. The army had come. We were gathered together somewhere in the field. They checked us. We were not armed. We ended up in the cells. We stayed there for about a week. Then we were taken back to Nanyuki, and we went through interrogations, individually. Were taken to Naivasha Maximum Prison, others to Kamete Maximum Prison. That was in August. Later on in December, I was moved to Naivasha Maximum Security Prison.
Mbugua was secluded from family and friends and seemed to have disappeared without a trace.
Our families were kept incommunicado. They had no idea where we were. They had stories that we were dead. My family had looked for my wife because they knew she was pregnant, and they didn't know whether I was dead, or they thought I was dead anyway. At least they would be seeing one of their son's child.
After 7.5 months, in March of 1983, Mbugua was released from custody.
So on the 14th of March 1983, we were put in a military bus or military lorry from Naivasha, brought to Kahawa Barracks, where they threw all kinds of odd shoes there, told us whatever can fit you, take. And we were given fare. Where are you from? Gatondo. 10 shillings. 10 shillings. Go home.
On the 1st of March 1985, Mbogwa joined the Kenya Airways and was steadily promoted over the years, eventually becoming the captain of the prestigious Dreamliner that is known famously for flying 14 hours directly to New York.
Beautiful aircraft, new technology, using composite materials, so making it lighter, and is more economical for the airlines.
Although Captain Joseph Mbogwa's military career seemed to have been cut short by the attempted coup of 1982, he has had a successful 35 years in the aviation industry. Reporting for KBC from Nairobi County, I'm Nissie, Imano.
All right, it is time now for business, but right before we go into other stories, let's take a look at the inauguration ceremony that is happening at the Panari Hotel of the members of the Kenya Maritime Authority. Let's take a listen.
In our country, this is the future. This is the sector that has not been rediscovered for a very long time. And I think maritime issues and shipping have been taken as A or B. And in fact, for many years, maritime and shipping is the least understood. So combined with fisheries and blue economy, many Kenyans have not understood the potential of this particular sector. And I think we have an opportunity which is noble and special. First of all, to ensure that Kenyans understand maritime and shipping issues, but also to make sure that maritime and shipping, and of course blue economy, becomes the new frontier for economic development of our country. So we have the enormous responsibility, beginning with me, the PS, and the entire board, to make sure that we live up to the dreams of His Excellency the President when he formed this particular State Department. I want to tell you from the beginning that my office will be very supportive, as you have already seen, and that of the PS, so that this particular board and the maritime in particular can be able to function. If you look at the numbers beyond seafaring, you realize within the Indian Ocean, apart from Durban in South Africa and Dubai, there is no provision.
Of course, we're on that story and we'll be giving you a comprehensive report in our subsequent bulletins. Now, moving on, 8 remote constituencies across the country will be connected to the national grid next week to support the operationalization of the word digital laboratories. Information, Communication and Digital Economy Cabinet Secretary Eliud Owalo says the digital laboratories seek to provide job opportunities for the youth and are seeking to leverage on power connections to open up off-grid remote areas for digital investments.
Kenya has one of the 10 fastest growing digital economies in the world, with more than half the population using a smartphone. To further increase internet access, the government is seeking to connect more remote areas to the national power grid to support internet infrastructure.
We are rolling out fiber, 100,000 kilometers of fiber. In that space, as we do that, we'll ensure, we have already mapped out all over the country areas which don't have connectivity.
Information, Communication and Digital Economy Cabinet Secretary Eliud Owalo says investments into the ICT sector will also target remote areas to allow youth across the country tap into the digital economy.
Let us think outside the box. We no longer have the white-collar jobs. How do we empower our youth? Perhaps through trade and entrepreneurship. So in that vein, we need to ask ourselves, what do we need to do?
The government will also undertake a public-private partnership to carry out ICT infrastructure developments.
In the area of financing, how to finance our projects, we need to think outside the box. But in the same vein, let us think of public-private partnerships. We need to think of how to pool together resources so that we have got revolving funds amongst ourselves. And the only way to do this is through the cooperative sector.
Hibak Said for Lunchtime News.
Kenya and Indonesia are in talks to sign a preferential trade area agreement in order to deepen bilateral relations between the two nations. Trade and Investments Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria has said the agreement will be part of the conversation between President William Ruto and Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Speaking during a meeting with the Indonesian Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment, Luhut Binsar, Kuria has said that the two countries are exploring ways to deepen two-way trade volumes.
We are cognizant of the effort of Indonesia to create a coalition or sort of an alliance of countries with the same ideology in terms of how to manage the natural resources. And Kenya is available and ready to partner and work with Indonesia to create that south-to-south partnership in terms of management of natural resources. And that is why we want to learn how Indonesia is doing it, but also to create partnership between Indonesia companies and government, Kenyan companies and government in the area of mining and exploitation of natural resources.
And Port Sacco has opened its members to non-port workers as it targets to grow its membership to over 16,000 from the current 11,000 in the next 1 year. The Sacco, which draws its membership from dock workers, says it is seeking to diversify its financial products portfolio to attract more members. The Sacco had a total asset topping of 8.4 billion shillings against member deposits of 4.58 billion, with the Sacco declaring 20% dividends.
As a whole, so that we can reach more members who may not necessarily want to come to the office for the same loans. As Port Sacco have embraced the government's innovative ways of dispersing funds to the non-reachable Kenyans through the Hustler Fund. We have technology that will enable us to disperse the same funds to the would-be customers. We as Mombasa Port Sacco, through the Ministry of Cooperatives and MSMEs, are ready, or more than ready, to receive the funds and disperse to the would-be customers.
On the international scene, the U.S. banking sector made record profits in the first 3 months of the year, helped by the turmoil that rippled through the sector following the collapse of the likes of Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse. About half the increase in profits across the industry came from one-time gains recorded by First Citizen and Flagster. Here are the details of this and other stories making headlines globally.
Bank profits reached an all-time high of about $80 billion in the first quarter, up 33% from the same period a year ago. They bought what was left of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, respectively, after they were seized by regulators in March and sold off at a discount. Banking turmoil in the U.S. sent customers racing to withdraw their deposits. JP Morgan Chase, the nation's largest bank by assets, which this month bought the failed lender First Republic, had the highest profit of $11.7 billion. Meanwhile, Toyota targets a 10% profit jump and robust EV sales as chip woes recede. Toyota Motor Corp says it expects operating profit to climb 10% this business year, with a 5-fold jump in pure electric vehicle sales amid an easing in global supply chain disruption brought about by a chip shortage. Finally, Goldman Sachs will pay $215 million to settle claims that it discriminated against women, offering female staff lower pay and fewer opportunities. The agreement comes a month before the long-running class action lawsuit was due to come to trial. It resolves claims from about 2,800 female staff who worked at the bank in the U.S. Goldman will work with outside experts to analyze its pay patterns and methods of promotion as part of the deal.
On the African continent, South Africa's food inflation is projected to ease this year. Despite the decrease of food prices, experts warn that the impact of the easing of the food inflation won't be felt immediately as businesses continue to feel the effect of load shedding. Details of these stories and others in our African Business Roundup.
South African consumers have been grappling with tough economic climate due to food inflation, interest rate hikes and load shedding. According to statistics, South Africa consumer price inflation ticked upwards to 7.1% in March from 7.0% in February, despite many experts predicting a decline. In March, the sweets and desserts, fruits and vegetables, and the product category other food products also massive upward inflationary pressure. In March, the sweets and desserts, fruits and vegetables, and the product category other food products also massive upward inflationary pressure, while the milk, eggs and cheese product group saw its annual increase reach 13.6% from the recent 3.7% low in April 2022. Meanwhile, the UK Supreme Court has ruled that it was too late for a group of Nigerian claimants to sue two Shell subsidiaries over 2011 offshore oil spill they say had a devastating impact on the coastal area where they live. A group of 27,800 individuals and 457 communities living in the Delta have been trying to sue Shell, saying the resulting oil leak polluted their lands and waterways, damaging farming, fishing, drinking water, mangrove forest and religious shrines. Finally, Rwandan President Paul Kagame met with Pamela Cook-Hamilton, Executive Director of the International Trade Center, where they discussed matters on trade, investment, and Africa's position in the changing face of global trade. ITC supports SheTrades and of its flagship programs in Rwanda. ITC supports SheTrades, which is one of its flagship programs in Rwanda. The program supports women in the business arena in terms of access to key knowledge, resources, and networks to grow and expand their entrepreneurial footprints.
And in sports, Jamaican sprinter Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price and Polish hammer thrower Anita Blodzik has arrived in Kenya, ready for the Kip Keino Classic Continental Tour, set for this Saturday at Kasarani Stadium.
3 times Jamaican 100-meter Olympic champion Shelly-Ann Fraser and 3 times Polish Olympic hammer throw champion Anita Blodzik arrived in the country early today ahead of this Saturday's 4th edition of the Kip Keino Classic Continental Tour at Kasarani Stadium in Nairobi. Shelly-Ann will be defending her last year's title as she prepares for her season with the ultimate goal of defending the world title in Budapest, Hungary.
Honestly, I'm looking forward to just competing well. I've not been not run since September last year, and it's a different year, so you kind of want to see where you're at, as opposed to last year when I ran a 200 in Kingston before I came here. This time I didn't run anything, so this is me just coming, seeing where I'm at and having a good time and execute, and I'm sure it will be fantastic.
Anita will also be competing in Kenya for a second consecutive time.
I am very happy to be back in Kenya. This for my first time in last year, and I was very very, very happy. Very good competitions, organizations, very good eat, hotel and fans. And it's okay.
This year's event has attracted over 200 international athletes, with Kenya's meet being the third in the gold label category after Australia and Botswana.
In the Champions League, Real Madrid and Manchester City played out an entertaining 1-1 draw in the first leg of the UEFA Champions League semi-final at the Santiago Bernabeu. The other first leg semi-final between Inter and AC Milan will be played tonight at the San Siro.